These are two vintage HPI 1/10 scale Nitro stadium trucks.
Nitro World Order.
Nitro World Order.
Two-wheel drive stadium trucks. Today, there aren't many left. Therefore, I think these two trucks deserve a little bit of special content. Now, this is here just to show you a couple of the advancements HPI has made over the years. This is a very old HPI Nitro Rush. I will remove the body in a couple minutes. Now, the car to its side is one that I recently picked up. It's a 2011 HPI Firestorm 10T. There were a couple models of these available. This is the one with a 2.4 gigahertz radio that came out in 2011. There was an earlier version that came with a regular radio from around 2007. All right, yeah, listen, bro, let me call you back. I'm doing a video outside before it starts to rain, all right? I purchased this truck in what is known as fully killed, disintegrated, murdered, and the murderer was not caught condition. And now you see it right here, guys. It's standing right alongside a green HPI Nitro Rush. And you know what? I want you to understand what it actually took for this truck to get here. Well, it came in a two-piece design. There was a hole because the guy crashed it. The whole front end was destroyed. In fact, this is the part that had to get removed. This is the front skid plate bulkhead. It's kind of an all-in-one set. Luckily, the parts were already provided to me. You're looking at original HPI parts. The chassis was completely bent. Luckily, the entire upper deck, and I'm going to remove the body now so you guys can see the amount of work I actually had to do. The entire upper deck on this, it's black aluminum. And this part right there, well, I hammered it out, guys. That's why it looks a little bit weird. That's because I literally put this in a vise, I bent it, then I took a giant hammer and I hammered it out. But guess what? The front two wheels, they look straight. Let's take a look at the bottom. You could see we have a whole new front bulkhead in here. This is just a skid plate, nothing else I could do about that. So it seems to be fairly straight. But that wasn't the end of the problems. In fact, there's a couple more. I was also missing a working steering tie rod. You could see right there on the left side. It looks like the screw was completely ripped out. Luckily, I used to own an HPI Blitz, and I had enough parts to replace the steering tie rod, or sometimes they call it the bell crank, whatever you want to call it. So now we have some proper steering. Luckily, if it wasn't for the fact that I had previous parts, we might have ran into a costly situation. But actually, that's not the end of it. You guys are looking at this carb right here? Let me pick up this carb. Do you notice anything that is missing? So right there, you're supposed to have what is known as the throttle lever. Now, the throttle lever arm is broken off. Also, it's a little tough to tell, but we're missing the gasket, referred to as the O-ring, that's supposed to be around the base. Now, originally, I thought there was an air leak. And that is because, guess what? We're literally missing the gasket that is supposed to be sitting there. Now, of course, I had to, at this point, I had to get a different carb, guys. I had no choice at this point. So you are now looking at a brand new carb for the HPI G3.0 engine. This chassis is now completely repaired. Shocks have been rebuilt. You can almost barely even tell that something happened here in the front. And this thing was super crooked. In fact, take a look at this picture again, because this is what I started with, guys. It is really bad. Now it just looks like some of the anodizing came off. It really isn't even that bad. I reused most of the screws. It looks a little bit like stress marks to me now. Let's check out the suspension on this vintage stadium truck. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. These are plastic body threaded shocks. It does the job just fine. I've also had to completely rehab the entire exhaust system, and I have luckily been able to find a proper gasket from THS Racing to use on the small block engine. That saved my life. Fuel tank seems to be very good in this car. It does not seem to leak. Now the other thing I had to rehab, more like replace, are these tires. Now, looking at these tires, the geometry was completely off because we have low wear on this side and very high wear on the inside of the tire. And of course they are very, very bald. So we're not going to be using these because it's pretty much pointless at this point. Luckily, I've been able to source some original HPI 5-star wheels. Pretty sure these are supposed to be painted. That was an option on some wheels back in the day. The tread seems to be normal, it's just a little bit dirty, but it is what it is. The question is, guys, should we take a look at the HPI Nitro Rush before? Well, I'm going to fire this up. We have no choice. I want to show you the progression of HPI Racing Nitro Stadium trucks. This is what it started with. Basically the same style of layout. We have an engine mounted here, similar mounting of the exhaust. Personally, I kind of like the Nitro Rush chassis. It's relatively easy to work on. We have pretty nice looking receiver box here, center mounted fuel tank. A lot of these features really carried over to the Firestorm, except it is beefier. Now you have an aluminum upper deck, you have a larger fuel tank with a built-in filter at the bottom. You have a nice upgraded pipe. You have an engine that makes 2.25 horsepower. This is the G3.0, a miracle of a nitro motor for a lightweight chassis like this. Now this one has a couple of its own problems, and it's known as low compression. This is an old 15FE motor, very low compression. This is not the original pipe. Originally these had kind of like these pretty bad exhausts coming down with a huge rubber exhaust grommet on the side. Nonetheless, my dudes, as we all know, you cannot kill a nitro. Now, I will tell you, this one was probably the worst one I've ever purchased. Now, I knew that it had a bent chassis, but when I got it, I was hoping it was just that. If I didn't have some spare parts from a HPI Blitz, mainly the steering tie rod components right there, it would have been a costly endeavor for myself. Well, guys, I bet you want to know, well, how are the electronics? 2.4 gigahertz, right? I'll show you the electronics, guys. I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite HPI radios. The reason is it has servo endpoint adjustments. You see that? I'm kind of zooming in on it right now. Very important. You have your low and your high settings for your throttle and steering servos, along with dual rate and throttle and steering trims. The normal kind of stuff. But what really matters is being able to set the endpoints correctly. Let's power this on. Here we go. Steering. Original servo, guys. Seems fine to me. Looks good to me. I gotta tell you, HPI electronics, they're not the fastest servos, but these radios, they cannot be killed. In fact, this drop-down steering wheel is quite comfortable. Reversing here on the side as well. Now the throttle servo is not an original servo because it is a Futaba servo. The brakes do work, throttle opens up all the way. There is one issue I am worried about, the spring inside the clutch. Usually these things are kind of old and the springs just get weak, and usually that means you're gonna have wheels spin at even a very low RPM. Actually, let me take a look at this. What clutch bell tooth we have? Oh wow, 19 teeth on the stock clutch bell. That is some high gearing on this. I think we need to do a couple speed runs, guys, eventually. What do you think? By the way, if this isn't enough facts for you, I want to throw one extra fact out. This was designed by the same guy that designed the Hellfire. You want to know what features are carried over from the Hellfire? Well, I read the information. Basically, it says the black anodized upper deck. That's a design feature from the Hellfire. Couldn't really find any more, because this is not a Hellfire, guys. The Hellfire is a 1/8 scale Nitro truggy. This is a 10th scale Nitro stadium truck. They are so different that if you went to Popeyes and you ordered chicken strips and they gave you fries, you would know they messed up your order. Let's do a test drive. I haven't really checked any of the carb settings. They look to be okay. I have a proper tuning screwdriver here, ready to go, guys, so don't you worry. 30% nitro in this. Let's just hope it fires up. The clutch spring is engaging a little early from what I can tell. At this low of an idle, it should not be rolling forward like this, guys. That is a bad sign of a weak and old loose clutch spring in the clutch itself. The drive results are in. Clutch spring is very loose. That's why, well, it sounds a little bit funny. I gotta inspect the clutch spring, the clutch itself, see just how loose it actually is. Now today, the road's a little bit wet, right? So two-wheel drive traction, not the best. But let me summarize what is good. It fired up, the brakes are good, and it's a nitro. and that is all you need to know. Now guys, I'm going to inspect the clutch spring. We will take a look, and I want to speed test this. Before I go, let me just say special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, my channel members, and all of you viewers out there. It's because of you that I'm able to make Nitro great again, by buying more Nitros, restoring them to the best of my abilities, and putting them back on the road running rich and loud. I'll see you guys in the future. There's nothing like Taco Bell, nachos, and a vintage TC3. I've put all of the best together. And now, let me enjoy my nachos.
Nitro World Order.
Nitro World Order.